Hello everyone, and welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. We're grateful you've chosen to spend a bit of your time with us today. I'm Ethan Foster, your affable guide to life's little mysteries, often found holding up a magnifying glass to the human condition.
And I'm Alara Skye. Rumor has it I'm never short on observations or punchlines. Together, we're here to take a deep dive into the brilliant complexities of health, with more than a sprinkle of humor on the side.
We've been called a few things: comedic duo, informational dynamic duo. My personal favorite is that pair that can't stay on topic, but I trust we'll keep on track today. Our subject is something truly fascinating: how probiotics may offer new hope for Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases.
There's a ton of fresh research out there, especially about the gut-brain axis, which sounds like some shady secret society, but is actually a legitimate and extremely cool biological connection.
Exactly. Apparently your gut is basically your body's second brain. And for those of us who rely heavily on our first brain, like you, Ilara, with your boundless comedic wit, it's comforting to know there's a second one lurking in our intestines, just in case.
You never know when your first brain might tap out. Then you can rely on the backup squad living in your small intestine. But let's talk specifically about why this is such a big deal, especially for people dealing with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other neurodegenerative challenges.
So here's the short version. We used to think of our gut as just the place where lunch goes to get processed. But it turns out it's also a major communication hub. There's this constant exchange happening between our microbiome, the various bacteria that dwell in our digestive system, and the brain.
The communication pathway is typically known as the gut-brain axis, which sounds high-tech, but is basically a two-way street. What happens in the gut affects the brain, and what happens in the brain affects the gut. Think of your gut and your brain as two old friends gossiping over the backyard fence. If the gossip is toxic, both friends end up in a sour mood.
A rather gossipy pair indeed. One of the issues researchers have highlighted is something called neuroinflammation. When your gut bacteria is out of whack, it can encourage the production of inflammatory molecules which can travel up to the brain and cause trouble.
Precisely. But here's the bright side. When your gut is in good shape, like a well-tended garden, it can cultivate beneficial substances like short-chain fatty acids that help the brain stay healthier. So now the new line of research is, if we fine-tune the gut microbiome using probiotics, can we slow or even reverse neurodegenerative issues?
One study out of Taiwan seems to think so. Researchers looked at a group of elderly participants with Alzheimer's, giving some of them a probiotic mix and others a placebo. It's the classic, who gets the real deal, who gets the sugar pill scenario.
Yes, and the group that received the probiotic was given a combination of bacterial strains such as Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus casei, Bifidobacterium bifidum, and Lactobacillus fermentum. If you're not an expert in Latin nomenclature, that basically sounds like the cast of a microbial Shakespearean play. But for our purposes, these are the beneficial hero strains.
And the results? Pretty stunning. After just 12 weeks, the probiotic group's test scores for cognitive function actually went up, while the placebo group declined. When you're grappling with a disease that progressively chips away at memory and cognition, any improvement is significant.
Plus, they found that markers of inflammation went down in the probiotic group. So not only were they sharper mentally, they were also biologically less inflamed.
And that's music to a lot of ears, because so much of Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases ties back to chronic inflammation. It's a bit like turning down the volume on a stereo, blasting static. Get the inflammation under control, and you can think more clearly.
These helpful bacteria also seem to produce short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate, that can cross over and bring good vibes to the brain. They help preserve neurons, reduce inflammation, and potentially slow down cognitive decline.
Absolutely. And that suggests a lot of potential for Parkinson's and other neurodegenerative conditions too. If your gut is sending out a battalion of beneficial chemical messengers and keeping the troublemakers at bay, your neurons may have a fighting chance.
One of the troublemakers we hear about is lipopolysaccharides, or LPS. When your gut is out of balance, LPS can leak into your bloodstream, creating an inflammatory free-for-all. That free-for-all is like a surprise party in your brain that you definitely did not RSVP for.
No confetti, just neural chaos. So, if probiotics can help seal the gut barrier, that might cut down on the infiltration of those inflammatory agents. The overall effect, less inflammatory mania in the head.
And that's the crux. It's all about synergy. You fix your gut helps fix your brain. Meanwhile, a healthy brain supports better digestion. Like I said, two old friends, only now they're cheering each other on instead of spreading gossip.
Let's talk risk factors for a second. Clearly not everything is about how many yogurt cups you consume. Genetics plays a role, so does exposure to heavy metals, pesticides, and lifestyle factors like diet, exercise, and stress. The usual suspects.
Right. Even those toxins like lead, arsenic, or mercury can harm your neurons if they get the chance. We want to minimize that exposure while also focusing on the simpler day-to-day things we can do to keep our gut, and thus our brain, happy.
Which leads nicely into a crucial point. Feeding your gut good bacteria is one piece of the puzzle. Another piece is starve out the harmful ones. If you're constantly downing sugar, processed junk, or weird food additives, it's basically an open buffet for the less friendly microbes.
Exactly. Let's shift into some practical tips, because we love to leave our listeners with at least a few approachable ideas. Dr. Mercola outlined 4 ways to support your brain through gut health, especially focusing on something called akkermansia, which to me sounds like the name of a wizard from a fantasy novel. But in real life, it's a beneficial bacterium that helps keep your intestinal lining robust.
That's a wizard I'd trust. So, these 4 ways. First is increasing akkermansia with targeted diet and supplementation. That means leaning into foods and supplements that help that particular species thrive and multiply. Maybe you get more fibrous vegetables, more whole food sources, more fermented favorites.
Fermented foods are the A-list in the gut health world, like VIPs that pass along the red carpet. Next up is enhancing short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. You want to feed your gut flora the fiber they need to produce these beneficial molecules.
Because those short-chain fatty acids are like the personal bodyguards for your neurons. They keep inflammation in check. They also help with that protective gut barrier.
Third strategy is supporting your gut-brain connection, meaning you reduce the chance of inflammatory compounds traveling through the bloodstream to the brain. So no more punching holes in the gut barrier with daily junk food. Instead, you eat foods that help seal and defend.
If your gut barrier is a fortress, you want to keep the gates well guarded. Otherwise, you'll have an invasion on your hands, an inflammatory Trojan horse.
Then the fourth approach, addressing systemic inflammation by promoting microbial diversity. More beneficial species equals less real estate for troublemakers, and you reduce your overall inflammatory load.
In other words, you can't thrive on donut holes and expect to be captain of a microbial dream team. If you want a gut that glows, you gotta treat it right. Personally, I find that a very convicting statement. But I still occasionally succumb to a pastry or two. Moderation, as they say, is key.
The interesting part is how all of this ties in with broader Alzheimer's prevention. Because once you realize your gut health matters, you start to see that other lifestyle choices do too. It's not just about swirling a probiotic capsule in your morning coffee. It's also about controlling your exposure to toxins, optimizing vitamin D, maybe even adjusting your diet to reduce things like gluten if you suspect issues with that.
There's also the detail that insulin resistance plays a role in brain aging. So keep an eye on blood sugar levels, because the more balanced your metabolic health, the calmer your neurons will likely be.
It's often referred to as type 3 diabetes in some circles. If your system is consistently dealing with high insulin and high blood sugar, that's a stress on the brain. So again, your daily food choices and your willingness to stand up to sugary desserts can make a difference.
I suppose that means we should also mention healthy fats. Our neurons love good fats, but not so much the dreaded industrial vegetable oils. Those can be pro-inflammatory. That's something to watch out for if you're the type who loves a deep-fried existence.
A deep-fried existence is not on my bucket list personally. I'd much rather crisp vegetables in an oven than dunk everything in oil that's older than my laundry detergent. But I digress.
Now, some folks also talk about the importance of vitamins like D, or ensuring that iron levels aren't too high. It's about a big picture approach, and interestingly, there's some research on the role of mental stimulation, learning new things, challenging your mind daily. So, it's not just the feeding of the body, but feeding the brain new tasks, new puzzles.
True. We are complicated beings after all. While probiotics are a bright star of possibility, they're not the lone hero. It's more like they brought in an entire supporting cast: diet, lifestyle, mental exercise, and a healthy environment.
One more note. Some folks mention the potential negatives of certain drugs, especially if they block acetylcholine or hamper the synthesis of essential compounds. That can accelerate cognitive decline. Another reason to be cautious with what we're putting in our bodies.
Indeed. But for today, our big star remains the mighty probiotic. Because how refreshing is it to hear that something as unassuming as beneficial bacteria could be a game changer in conditions previously considered unstoppable?
Absolutely. The idea that you might slow or even partially reverse cognitive decline simply by improving your gut's bacterial balance is pretty empowering. And it's not just about popping a pill. It's about the fundamental synergy in your body. You nurture the good microbes, and they nurture you in return.
It's basically the friendliest coworker relationship ever. Your gut does half the shift, your brain does the other half, and you both clock out early for a better life. But in all seriousness, for anyone experiencing the beginnings of cognitive decline, it's encouraging to know there are multiple avenues to explore.
That's the main takeaway. We have more tools in our toolbox than we realized. And if the gut-brain axis is as powerful as research now suggests, focusing on a healthier gut might be one of the simpler, more cost-effective strategies to bolster brain function.
So, dear audience, if you felt a bit weighed down by the gloom and doom of traditional perspectives on neurodegenerative disease, let these probiotic findings shine a little light on your day. Might as well feed that second brain of yours some good microorganisms, right?
Couldn't have said it better. Just remember, it's a holistic process. Probiotics might be a central piece, but it's also about ditching toxic exposures, staying active, getting outside in the sunshine, and challenging your mind. Oh, and maybe even taking up a new hobby, like crocheting probiotic-themed plushies if you're so inclined.
Hey, that's not a bad idea. You could stitch a big smiling Lactobacillus fermentum as a daily reminder to keep your gut in good shape. Might be a bit of a conversation starter when guests drop by, though.
If you want to really stun your dinner guests, serve them a big bowl of homemade fermented veggies while proudly displaying your crocheted microbe. Truly a conversation piece in every sense.
Let's see how many people actually try that. In any case, we hope you've gleaned some knowledge about how critical gut health is, not only for digestion, but for something as integral and complex as cognitive function.
Exactly. And we invite you all to keep exploring this topic. The breakthroughs in gut-brain science are coming in faster than you can say probiotic synergy. The long and short of it, for a healthier brain, give your gut the star treatment it deserves.
We appreciate you all for joining us today. Please remember, knowledge is power. But knowledge with a dash of comedic flair is a superpower. Thanks for joining us on Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom.
We'll be back soon for more discussions. Until next time, this is Ethan Foster saying keep your brain engaged and your gut enthralled.
And I'm Alara Sky, reminding you that you're never too old or too young to cultivate the microbial community in your gut. And if you're crocheting them, definitely send us a picture.
Take care, everyone. Here's to your health, inside, outside, and all the microscopic places in between.
Stay curious, friends, and keep feeding that second brain of yours. Catch you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.